Hello, boys and girls and babes. Welcome back to the Janae Talks Caps podcast. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in today. We have got a lot to get to today, including Phase 2 of the NHL Draft Lottery, the round robin and qualifying round that just wrapped up. We've got your Washington Capitals, New York Islanders breakdown for you, as we now know that is who the Caps will be facing in round number 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. As well, we've got predictions for the rest of the matchups coming up in round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. So you are more than welcome as well, by the way, to hold us to each of those predictions once the round has concluded. And for those who were not yet aware, round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs will get underway tomorrow, which is Tuesday, August 11th. And the Caps will play their first game against the Islanders on Wednesday. Puck drop at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific. So let's start first with some housekeeping. So Phase 2 of the NHL's ridiculous draft lottery happened today. And as we know, it included the 8 teams that lost in the qualifying round of the playoffs, vying for the number 1 overall pick in the 2020 NHL entry draft. And this lottery could really be more accurately described as the Alexis Lafreniere sweepstakes, as he is the clear choice to be the number 1 overall pick. So the 8 teams that lost in the qualifying round, those being the Pittsburgh Penguins, yes, I know, suppress your giggles, please, the Edmonton Oilers, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Florida Panthers, the Nashville Predators, the New York Rangers, the Winnipeg Jets, and the Minnesota Wild. Each of them had a 12.5% chance of landing the number 1 overall pick, and presumably eventually landing top-rated prospect Alexis Lafreniere. Now, the obvious problem with the way that the NHL chose to do this 2-phase version of the draft lottery, and it's been well covered, is that when Phase 1 happened and we found out that it would in fact be one of 16 teams who were going to be competing in the qualifying round of the playoffs who would eventually get this number 1 overall pick, that's the problem right there. There was really no way for the NHL to come out of Phase 2 of this draft lottery looking good, because Phase 1 had already gone awry. So no one wanted to see a team that's been given a chance to compete for the Stanley Cup in the playoffs also then get a chance to land the number 1 overall pick. This is something that obviously in a normal year doesn't happen. You don't get a shot at both, right? You don't get a shot to be in the playoffs and then also get a shot at the number 1 overall pick, barring a trade or anything like that. So, and then to make matters worse, there were so many upsets in the qualifying round of the playoffs that then instead of teams like the Montreal Canadiens or the Chicago Blackhawks or the Arizona Coyotes having a chance at the number 1 overall pick, now what you had was you had teams like the Pittsburgh Penguins, the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Edmonton Oilers. They're getting a chance at the number 1 overall pick. So, the jokes pretty much write themselves at that point, don't they? So it really just went from bad to worse for the NHL. But anyways, it happened. And I won't criticize the NHL too much because at least they have found a way to make hockey work during the era of COVID-19. These are extraordinary times, obviously, and the NHL in general has done a fantastic job so far giving us back the game we love during a time when we really needed it. So for that, I commend them, I thank them, and I won't give them too much shit for the absolute gong show that was this year's draft lottery. 0 positive COVID-19 tests again today within both hub city bubbles, by the way. So what the NHL is doing here is working, and round 1 of the Stanley Cup playoffs, like I said, it begins tomorrow. Something that no one thought was possible just mere months ago. So anyways, like I said, the jokes about the draft lottery were writing themselves with fans everywhere and even some media personalities as well. Tim and Sid from Sportsnet, who, I watch and listen to all the time, and Steve Dangle, same story there. I listen to him all the time, watch his videos. He's hilarious. Those are among just the ones who I heard making the joke that obviously the draft lottery was going to be rigged for either Toronto, Pittsburgh, or Edmonton to get the number 1 overall pick. And I think probably all of these jokes being made were exactly the reason why the NHL went out of their way to show us that the lottery was not going to be rigged. They didn't do it behind closed doors this time. They did it on live TV right in front of us. Although you could make the argument, and I've heard some making the argument, that a few of those lottery balls looked a little bit heavier than the rest of them, didn't they? But that's just speculation, obviously. So anyways, Toronto, they did not win, and nor did Pittsburgh, and nor did Edmonton. And so for that, we can all be thankful as hockey fans. Particularly in the case of Pittsburgh, anytime the Penguins lose, we all win. Am I right? So it's quite satisfying knowing that not only did these teams, the Penguins, the Leafs, etc., get knocked out of the playoffs early again, but they also will not receive a totally undeserved reward of being handed the first overall pick. And actually, in the Leafs' case, it's even worse, as not only did they lose in the qualifying round, not only do they not get the first overall pick, which, listening to Leafs Nation, many of them felt that they were entitled to for reasons unknown. But they also now have to send their first-round pick in this year's draft to the Carolina Hurricanes. And that's going to end up being a pretty high pick, probably higher than the Leafs thought it was going to be, given that the Leafs obviously bowed out in the qualifying round. So it will be the 13th overall pick. So tough times for Leafs fans. Tough times for Steve Dangle. So anyways, the first overall pick in the 2020 draft, in the 2020 draft, will go to the New York Rangers, who finished 18th out of 31 teams in the NHL this season, and had a 56.4% winning percentage over the course of the regular season. So, it's dumb, it's crazy, it's weird, but like I said, I'm not going to rag on the NHL too much right now because, hey, they've given us hockey back during a time where, like I said, it was thought to be impossible to do so. They've made it work. So I won't say another word for now anyways, at least for a couple of days. And the qualifying round, as I alluded to, was insane. The Caps and the rest of the top teams in the NHL played some pretty tame round-robin games, I would say would be the best way to describe it, to determine their seeding. And I did watch every minute of every Caps game just because I wanted to see how they looked, after 4.5 months off, more so than I cared about seeding. But given that the round robin obviously did not include any do or die games, the qualifying round was really the place to be as a fan. Not so much maybe the place to be if you are a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins, Edmonton Oilers, or Toronto Maple Leafs, etc. But a few quick notes on the round robin first. We'll go through that first since that's where obviously the Caps were playing. So on our eastern side, the Philadelphia Flyers claimed the number 1 seed, jumping all the way up from number 4, which is where they started. At the conclusion of the regular season. The Tampa Bay Lightning stayed at number 2, where they were, and the Washington Capitals likewise stayed at number 3, where they were, which means that the Boston Bruins, who looked absolutely terrible throughout both their exhibition and round-robin games, with their top line going scoreless and posting a combined -7 rating, they drop all the way from being the number 1 seed to being the number 4 seed, and they will now face the Carolina Hurricanes in the first round as a result. And, I'm not kidding. The Bruins have been horrendous in the return to play. They look bad. They're getting bad results. They went 0-3-0 in the round robin, 0-4-0 if you include their exhibition game, which they played against the Columbus Blue Jackets. And they were outscored 13-5 total in those 4 games. So, they scored 5 goals total in 4 games. And as I mentioned, their top line has been atrocious, scoring no goals through the 3 round-robin games and putting up only a single point, that being an assist by Patrice Bergeron, and posting, like I said, a combined -7 rating. To be fair to Patrice Bergeron, though, he was only a -1, while David Pastrnak and Brad Marchand were each a -3. So it will be very interesting, to say the least, to see what they look like in round 1. The Philadelphia Flyers are rolling. Tampa Bay is just Tampa Bay, and your Washington Capitals have so far gone 2-1-1 in the return to play, beating the Carolina Hurricanes and the Boston Bruins, both in regulation, losing to the Philadelphia Flyers and losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning in a shootout. And if there's one important thing, more than anything, that I will take out of the round robin for the Caps, it's that Braden Holtby is definitely in playoff form. He's looked incredible, and it's being reflected in his numbers so far. But I'll get to more of what I expect out of the Caps and others in round one a little bit later in this episode. So for the western side of the round robin was the Vegas Golden Knights, claiming the number 1 seed, courtesy of an overtime victory over the Colorado Avalanche, who finished the round robin as the number 2 seed, which was also where they had finished the regular season. So no movement for the Avs. The Dallas Stars moved up a spot to the number 3 seed, and the St. Louis Blues, much like the Boston Bruins, went winless in the round robin and fell all the way from the number 1 seed to the number 4 seed. So my sole observation, I would say, on the West for the time being is that the Colorado Avalanche are super fun to watch, and I could easily see them winning the Stanley Cup. That is all. Moving on. I want to talk a little about that qualifying round. That as a fan of hockey in general, even if your own team wasn't in the qualifying round, this was a ton of fun to watch and follow along with. In fact, it was probably more fun if your own team wasn't in the qualifying round. Less stress. You can just sit back and enjoy the madness. So you'll remember that in a previous episode, I had predicted that there were going to be a lot of upsets in this qualifying round. And that prediction has now come to fruition in a big, glorious way. For starters, both number 12 seeds, the Montreal Canadiens in the East, and the Chicago Blackhawks in the West, took out both number 5 seeds, that being the Pittsburgh Penguins in the East and the Edmonton Oilers in the West. Boy, who could have predicted that? Oh, wait, I did. Seriously, I did. You can look back, and it is right there. Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, and their loyal band of fellow crybabies were knocked out in only 4 games by the 24th place Montreal Canadiens. They could not even muster enough balls to make it to a Game 5. In fact, they were shut out by the Habs in Game 4 to end their season. So Crosby, he had 3 points in the 4 games. Malkin had but a single assist in the series to go along with a -3 rating. And Letang was pointless, both on the score sheet and also just in the larger sense of his existence, to go along with a -2 rating. So actually Letang, at times managed to be so bad on defense that it actually looked as if he was playing for the other team entirely, as has so often been the case with him in recent years. So the Penguins also, predictably, had an absurd number of power plays gifted to them in this series, but they still could not beat the lowly Habs. So, the Penguins will go into this offseason having not won a Stanley Cup playoff game since they beat our own Washington Capitals in game number 4 of the second round in 2018. So that spans 3 postseasons now that the Pittsburgh Penguins will not have won a Stanley Cup playoff game. And we all know what happened after that game number 4 of the second round in 2018, of course. Right at the end of the game, TJ Oshie beat the shit out of Chris Letang. The Caps won game number 5 and game number 6 to eliminate the Penguins. And the Caps, of course, eventually went on to win the Stanley Cup that season. The Penguins were swept out of the first round by the New York Islanders last season. And now, obviously, this season, they will not be in the Stanley Cup playoffs at all after losing in the qualifying round. What a time to be alive. So Sidney Crosby, he admitted to media members after the loss that it's very possible that the Penguins' window to win another championship is closing, citing his own age and his own deteriorating health as well. So if the Penguins never win again, then, you really hate to see it, truly. Just kidding. I don't hate to see it at all. And as I mentioned, the Chicago Blackhawks were also able to knock out the Edmonton Oilers. Again, just as I had predicted, the championship pedigree of Jonathan Toews, Patrick Kane, and Duncan Keith came to play, as did rookie and Calder Trophy nominee Dominic Kubalik. And overall, the Hawks just had too many guys contributing, compared to an Oilers team consisting only of 2 players. Those 2 players obviously being Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. So McDavid had a ridiculous 9 points in the 4 games that it took for Chicago to win this series. But again, a team effort will beat 2 players almost every single time. And that's exactly what happened here. maybe, it's unfair for me to say 2 players in this case specifically, as Ryan Nugent-Hopkins actually did have a pretty good series for the Oil as well. But still, a team effort will be 3 players almost every single time too. So the Oilers need to make some changes this offseason, and I do expect them to. Anyways, sticking with the upset theme, the number 11 seed in the West, the Arizona Coyotes, they beat the number 6 seeded Nashville Predators in only 4 games, because why not? It's 2020. I do not know why I continue to pick the Nashville Predators year after year after year in my hockey pools and brackets to beat teams that they should beat, only to see them lose every time. I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess. Sticking in the West, the Vancouver Canucks beat the Minnesota Wild. It was a tough break for the Wild to lose Ryan Suter to injury. And the Calgary Flames beat the Winnipeg Jets, or at least they beat half of the Winnipeg Jets, as the Jets had so many injuries. This was projected to be one of the tightest and most exciting series of the qualifying round. But it really ended up not being that at all, because, like I said, the Jets were ravaged by injuries to guys like Mark Scheifele and Patrick Laine, just to name a couple of them. I think I heard Laine's was a hand injury due to overuse playing Fortnite. And in the East, surely the most comical result, other than the Habs beating the Penguins, was the Toronto Maple Leafs losing yet another playoff series, this time to the Columbus Blue Jackets. And, it's rather funny because when we get to this time of year, playoff time that is, the excuses out of Leafsland are always plentiful. Every time they inevitably get eliminated early. So, first it was all Phil Kessel's fault. Then we were told that John Tavares was going to fix everything. Watch out, we were told. The Leafs are going to outscore everyone on their way to the Cup. Then it was all Jake Gardner's fault. Then it was all Nazem Kadri's fault. Then we flip-flop back and forth between blaming those two for a while. Then it was all Mike Babcock's fault. Then the only reason the Leafs haven't won the Cup is because they have to face the Boston Bruins in the first round every year. Then it's because somebody on the 4th line or the 3rd D pairing is injured. So the excuses never end in Leafs land. But let's check in on how we're doing here with some of these. So let's see. Phil Kessel won 2 Stanley Cups immediately after getting the hell out of the Toronto Maple Leafs organization. Okay, so that's not a great look for the Leafs. John Tavares largely has not done anything in the playoffs except miss a yawning, wide-open cage in Game 5 against Columbus yesterday. The Leafs, who we were warned were going to outscore everyone on their way to the Cup, scored a measly 3 even-strength goals total through 5 games against Columbus and were shut out twice. Okay, so again, not a great look for the Leafs. Tavares' ex-Islanders, by the way, they won their qualifying round series and are still in the playoffs. Jake Gardner won his qualifying round series and is still in the playoffs. Nazem Kadri won his qualifying round series and is still in the playoffs. Mike Babcock, probably on a beach somewhere, laughing his ass off and buying drinks on the Maple Leafs dime. And as for facing someone other than the Boston Bruins, well, that obviously didn't help either. So the Toronto Maple Leafs have not won a playoff series since 2004. This is a fact. Yet for some reason, their players, their coach, their general manager, they all still seem to think their shit don't stink. Well, I've got news for you. Your shit does stink. It smells terrible, actually. And Capitals captain Alex Ovechkin, he predicted this months ago, citing how he does not believe that the Leafs play what he called winning hockey, and therefore that they will not win when it counts. So the Leafs players at the time scoffed at this, while then head coach Mike Babcock said that Ovi was right. Babcock was then fired by the Leafs shortly after. Austin Matthews in particular, he vowed that they would prove Ovechkin wrong. Alex Ovechkin, for his part, he went on to score 2 goals, including the overtime winner, and 4 points that night as the Caps defeated the Maple Leafs 4-3 in Toronto. So it was classic Alex Ovechkin backing up his words with his on-ice performance, and it was perhaps a bit of foreshadowing regarding the Leafs. And not only were they unable to prove Ovechkin wrong on that night, but the guy had just ripped them a new asshole publicly And just hours later, they were letting him rip in 2 goals and 4 points. So they couldn't stop it, not only because Ovechkin is Ovechkin, which would be reason enough, but also because they don't have the guts or the heart for it. So Ovi is surely laughing his ass off, along with Babcock and along with the rest of us right now, as the Leafs were, again, unable to prove Ovechkin wrong. They lost in predictable fashion to the Blue Jackets, being out-hustled and outworked by a team with way less talent. So, it's predictable at this point. They talk about it a lot up here, living in Canada. It's on Sportsnet, it's on TSN every day. Leafs. Nobody's happy. There should be big changes there. Whether or not there will be, we'll just have to wait and see. They're kind of handcuffed because they handed out all of these humongous, ridiculous contracts to all of these players who hadn't yet proved anything. So, it'll be interesting to see what they can do there, but they need to change quite a bit. So anyways, staying in the Eastern Conference, we also saw the New York Islanders beat the Florida Panthers in 4 games, and the Carolina Hurricanes swept the New York Rangers out of the qualifying round in 3 games, and that is all she wrote. So for me, this qualifying round, it really, it went pretty much perfectly. We actually have a saying around my family for when things go perfectly according to plan. And it had started because my mom was always saying that something is just ducky. But I had always heard it for some reason as just dicky. And so one day when something went exactly the way I wanted it to, I turned to my mom and I said, well, that's just dicky. To which, of course, she laughed and asked what the hell I was trying to say. I said, I'm saying it went perfectly. It went just dicky. And she's like, no, honey, ducky. It's ducky. Like quack, quack, ducky. So anyways, now whenever something goes good, we always say it went just dicky. So a tribute to my idiocy and poor listening skills. But the point is, this qualifying round for me went just dicky. The Penguins and the Leafs are both out. And as a bonus, neither of them get the number 1 overall pick. Sidney Crosby, Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid are all out, which means the media up here in Canada will actually have to find something else to talk about. Perhaps they can talk about any of the other 100 great players in the league for a change. It'd be really nice. Just dicky. Okay, so we know now the matchups for the first round are set. So in the, let me pull it up here. So in the Eastern Conference, it will be the Philadelphia Flyers against the Montreal Canadiens, the Tampa Bay Lightning in a rematch of last season's shocking first-round series against the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Washington Capitals against the New York Islanders, and the Boston Bruins against the Carolina Hurricanes. In the Western Conference, it will be the Vegas Golden Knights against the Chicago Blackhawks, the Colorado Avalanche against the Arizona Coyotes, the Dallas Stars against the Calgary Flames, and the St. Louis Blues against the Vancouver Canucks. Now, there's a lot of really great storylines here with these matchups. Obviously, let's talk about Caps versus Islanders, right? So it's the Caps versus their former head coach, Barry Trotz, who they won a Stanley Cup with in 2018. So this, obviously, is a very intriguing matchup. Let's break it down a bit, shall we? So, obviously, this series will be all about the offense of the Washington Capitals against the defense of the New York Islanders. So the Caps, they were the second highest scoring team in the National Hockey League this season, while the Islanders were in the top 10 when it comes to keeping the puck out of their net. So interestingly, though, the Caps actually did have a better penalty kill than the Islanders did this season. So that's something to keep an eye on in this series. The Caps were 6th in the entire NHL on the PK, at 82.6%. The Islanders were 15th in the NHL at 80.7%. This series will also feature a duel between current Caps goaltender Braden Holtby and former Caps goaltender Semyon Varlamov. So I told you there's a few different storylines going on here. So there's a few different Caps connections with this Islanders team, which makes things really interesting. Not only with Varlamov, but obviously, like I said, with Barry Trotz, of course, and with his assistant coach Lane Lambert and his goaltending coach Mitch Korn as well. They, of course, were both a part of Trotz's Stanley Cup winning staff in Washington. So The Islanders, offensively, they don't bring a lot to the table. They were 22nd in the NHL this season in scoring. In fact, the Caps scored close to a full goal per game more than the Islanders did this season. But the Islanders don't need to score a lot because, as I've mentioned, they don't give up a lot. They're trying to win games 2-1, not 6-4. And obviously, they are extremely well coached, and they play their system to a T as well. The Caps will have to be patient and structured and disciplined if they want to win this series, because you know that the Islanders are going to be all three of those things under Barry Trotz. So the Caps, they can't get frustrated. It's going to be muddy, messy, trying hockey with a clogged up neutral zone. So you'll have to persevere. You can't get overzealous in trying to create scoring chances against this Islanders team because that is exactly what they want you to do. And that's a recipe for a series loss. If you do that, if you start getting frustrated because the cute, pretty plays aren't there, then you're playing right into their hands, really. So the Islanders, they want to frustrate you. They want you to try something stupid in the neutral zone because you can't break through their brick wall of defense. And so then you start trying ill-advised, fancy shit, and they, in turn, take the puck from you for a turnover and come back down on you and score. That is their game. The Islanders play a boring game by design. They will wait for you to fuck up, and then they'll try to take the few chances that they get in a game and capitalize on them for goals. Because, like I said, they only need a couple of goals to win anyway because their defensive system is so good. So if you're the Caps, you have to be smart. The good news is that the Capitals have more than enough offensive skill that they should be able to break through the Islanders' defense, even if it is one of the best in the league. But again, the Caps have to be smart about it. The other good news is that if the Caps do find themselves in a situation where dumping the puck in seems to be the only way to get into the Islanders' zone, then they are well equipped as a team to go get the puck back after dumping it in. The Caps as a team are the best in the NHL when it comes to having that unique combination of size, strength, physicality, speed, and of course skill. So they have the size, strength, and physicality to go hammer the Islanders' defenders after dumping the puck into the Islanders' zone. They have the speed to get there before the Islanders can make a clean breakout. And, of course, they have the skill to put the puck in the net with efficiency on the few chances that they will get on Varlamov or on Thomas Greiss or whoever's in net. So they're well equipped to beat this Islanders team, again, if they are smart about it. On the other hand, if they're trying to play cute hockey and make pretty plays and score pretty goals, then they're going to lose. It's as simple as that. So for the tail of the tape in the series, the Caps and the Islanders, they split 4 games during the regular season, with the road team actually winning every game, interestingly enough. So the Caps first ruined the Islanders' home opener by winning 2-1 in New York, proving that they can beat the Islanders in a game where the Isles were playing peak Islander hockey. So that's encouraging. It was a low-scoring affair, and the Caps came out on top. The Isles then won 4-3 in D.C. on New Year's Eve, and then the Caps won a barn burner 6-4 in New York in what was probably one of the Caps' best comebacks of the season. You'll remember the Caps were down 4-1 at the end of the second period in that game. Islanders defenseman Devin Tays, he scored the Islanders' 4th goal, and then he mocked Evgeny Kuznetsov's bird celebration. So then the Caps came roaring back in the third period and scored 5 unanswered goals to win 6-4. So Alex Ovechkin, he led the charge with a hat trick, which at the time was also actually his second straight hat trick, and that was when he passed Mario Lemieux and then tied Steve Yzerman on the NHL's all-time goals list, jumping from 11th to 9th in NHL history all in one game. The Islanders then won again in D.C., this time by a 5-3 score to even the season series at 2 games apiece. So my takeaways from the season series are that obviously scoring 14 goals against the Islanders in 4 games, the Caps should feel pretty good about their offensive game against the Isles. Even if the Islanders are obviously going to be tightening up the defense even more for the playoffs, the Caps have shown and proven to themselves that they can have success offensively against this team and against these goalies. So if nothing else, it should make them feel good and give them some confidence heading into the series. The Caps are also a far superior puck possession and shot generating team compared to the Islanders. And that's evidenced, not only in the numbers for both clubs over the season as a whole, but also specifically in the numbers for the season series against one another. The Caps for the season as a whole generated 32 shots per game and give up only 30.2 shots against per game. Both good for being in the top third of the league. The Islanders, by contrast, were 29th out of 31 teams in the league for shot generation. So they generated only 29.6 shots per game. Only the Detroit Red Wings and Buffalo Sabres were worse in this category. So that is not company that you want to keep. And they gave up, the Islanders did, they gave up 31.2 shots against per game, which was 15th in the NHL for the season. So not surprising at all that the Caps generate a lot more shots for than the Islanders do, but perhaps a little bit surprising that the Caps are actually a better shot suppression team than the Islanders are. Like I said, we hear a lot about the Islanders' defense. Of course, when you look just strictly at how many shots you're giving up, you sometimes you want to dig a little bit deeper to look at where those shots are coming from. I know that for the Islanders, they might be giving up 31.2 shots against per game, but a lot of them certainly are from the perimeter, from the outside. So for the season series between the two clubs, the Caps owned the puck at a... the Caps owned the puck a ridiculous 59.6% of the time at even strength. In fact, the Caps had over 60% of the total shot attempts in 3 of the 4 games against the Isles this season. The only game in which the Caps drifted closer to the 50% mark was in their 5-3 loss to the Isles in DC. But even then, the Caps were still holding strong with nearly 53% of the total shot attempts in the game. So, interestingly enough, only the President's Trophy winning Boston Bruins had a worse rate of possession than the Isles when facing the Caps this season. But that, of course, is to be expected. The Bruins are bitch. So the Caps will probably have the puck a lot in this series against the Islanders. It's what they do with it that will count, however. So offensively... the Caps have star power and depth of talent, which the Islanders simply do not have. Barry Trotz said as much in his comments yesterday when he found out that his Islanders will be facing the Caps in round 1. He complimented not only the star power, but the championship pedigree of the Caps as well. The Caps have, obviously, 4 great lines, and they use all 4 of them, which is important. They have Alex Ovechkin, who won his 9th Maurice Rocket Richard Trophy this season as the NHL's top goal scorer. After that, to put it into perspective, the Islanders' leading goal scorer this season was Brock Nelson with 26 goals. So, Alex Ovechkin obviously scored 48 goals in the shortened season, and then after him, there was TJ Oshie with 26 goals, Jakub Vrana with 25 goals, Tom Wilson with 21 goals, and Evgeny Kuznetsov with 19 goals in only 63 games played. Lars Eller, is the third-line center. He already had 16 goals in the shortened season. John Carlson, who led all NHL defensemen in points and is going to win the Norris Trophy this season, he had 15 goals on his own from the back end. And that's not even to mention a guy like Nicklas Backstrom, who is, for my money, the best passer in the entire NHL. And so he puts up, obviously, a hell of a lot of points as well. So the Isles simply cannot match up with the Caps offensively, but then, there are very few teams who can. Probably the Tampa Bay Lightning are the only team that can punch in the Caps weight class offensively, but the Isles, they know this. They know that if they are going to beat the Caps, it's not going to be by outscoring them. So in any case, the offensive edge in this series definitely goes to the Caps. Defensively, the edge definitely goes to the Islanders. For the goaltending matchup, I'm giving the edge to Braden Holtby because he's a proven winner when it matters most, and he also owns the best career playoff save percentage in NHL history among goaltenders with at least 60 games played, having saved 92.8% of the shots he's faced in 92 career playoff games played. So since Holtby made his NHL playoff debut in 2012 against the then defending Stanley Cup champion Boston Bruins, when he knocked them out in 7 games, No goalie has won more playoff games than the Holt Beast. He has won 49 playoff games over that time, including, of course, all 16 wins when the Capitals won the Stanley Cup in 2018. So advantage to the Caps and to Holtby in the goaltending department. And for coaching, I think it's pretty clear the edge goes to the Islanders. I can't talk about Todd Reirden as a head coach a lot of the time because he pisses me off. He was a great defensive coach working one-on-one with the defensemen. He is not a good head coach. And I still love Barry Trotz as well. So anyways, now that we have previewed the Caps-Islanders series for you, I will give you my predictions for the rest of the first-round matchups. So in the East, I've got the Philadelphia Flyers beating the Montreal Canadiens. I do think the Tampa Bay Lightning will beat the Columbus Blue Jackets this time around, even though it would be absolutely hysterically hilarious if the Blue Jackets were to knock them out again. And to be clear, it's not that I think the Lightning are any better or any tougher or any more mentally prepared to take on the Blue Jackets and playoff hockey as a whole this time around. It's just that you have to remember... last year's version of the Blue Jackets had Artemi Panarin, who is a Hart Trophy nominee for the league's MVP this season. They had Matt Duchene, Ryan Dzingel, etc. They had Josh Anderson playing. He's been out this time around, injured, not yet recovered from the shoulder surgery that he had. They had Sergei Bobrovsky, although you could certainly argue, and I will argue, that Jonas Korpisalo and Elvis Merzlikins have proven to be an upgrade over Bob. I certainly think they have been, especially with what we saw against the Toronto Maple Leafs. But they're just not as good or as deep as the team that ousted the Lightning last season. Now, with all of that being said, I could still easily see the Lightning choking again in this one, haunted by the ghosts of playoffs past. But the smart money, if you can't afford to lose it, is on the Lightning winning this one. I do think our Washington Capitals are going to beat the New York Islanders. And finally, I think in the only upset of the Eastern Conference first round, the red-hot Carolina Hurricanes are going to beat the struggling, that President's Trophy sure feels like a long time ago, Boston Bruins. I really wouldn't be surprised at all. I really think that Carolina is going to win that series. In the West, I've got the Vegas Golden Knights beating the Chicago Blackhawks with absolutely zero contributions from loud-mouthed pylon Ryan Reeves, as per usual. I've got the Colorado Avalanche beating the Arizona Coyotes, and for what it's worth, I think the Avs are going all the way to the Stanley Cup final this season. I've got the Dallas Stars beating the Calgary Flames, and I've got the St. Louis Blues beating the Vancouver Canucks. So pretty boring stuff in the Western Conference, no upsets. Anyways, those are my predictions. And like I said at the top of the episode, if you don't agree with them, you can feel free to argue about it in the comments section. That's all we have for you today, Caps fans. As I mentioned, the Caps will kick off round one against the New York Islanders on Wednesday. That goes at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, noon Pacific Time. So start thinking of your excuses right now to get out of work for the afternoon. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. We've got tons of great stuff coming up throughout the playoffs. Our podcast is available across pretty much all major platforms. You can also subscribe to us on YouTube. We'll have some great stuff on there as well. We've got some rather entertaining videos lined up, and they'll be coming out shortly as well. You can also like and or follow our Facebook page, Janaea Talks Caps, or our Twitter or our Instagram under the same name. Pretty much any social media platform that you like to use, we are on there. So follow along and let's enjoy this ride together. And until next time, Caps fans, you stay classy, stay healthy, stay safe. Let's rock the red and enjoy some Stanley Cup playoff hockey in August. And as always, let's go Caps.